So today we're going to dive into one of the most successful and, as you're about to see, one of the most controversial self-help books ever written. We're talking about Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life. This is a book that sold tens of millions of copies, but its core message has kicked off a debate that's been raging for decades.
And first, just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're dealing with here, more than 35 million copies have been sold worldwide since it first came out in 1984. This isn't just a book, It's a full-blown global phenomenon that really shaped the whole self-help and New Age landscape for generations.
But this is where it gets really interesting. This chart just captures perfectly how divisive this book is. Look at that. Almost half of its reviewers on Goodreads give it a perfect 5 stars. But then you look at the other side and you see a whole lot of people giving it just 1 or 2 stars, with some calling it straight up harmful. It's either passionate devotion or just fierce condemnation.
So what is it about this book? Why does it get such extreme reactions? I mean, how can one book be a life-saving guide for millions of people and at the same time a dangerous delusion for so many others?
Okay, so let's start by digging into the core philosophy, right? Let's look at the promise of self-healing that just grabbed millions of people and turned this book into such a sensation.
At its heart, it all boils down to this one incredibly powerful promise. The main idea is that our thoughts, our limiting beliefs, those are the real root cause of our problems, and that includes our illnesses. So the thinking goes, if you change your thinking, if you do the mental work, you can heal your body and, well, your whole life. It's a message of ultimate personal power.
And you have to understand, for Louise Hay, this wasn't just some abstract theory she cooked up. It came directly from her own life story. I mean, she went through extreme childhood trauma and abuse. And then later in life, she gets a cancer diagnosis, which she claims she healed herself from completely, just using forgiveness, therapy, and nutrition. Her life was her proof of concept.
And you can totally see the appeal, right? For millions of readers, like this person here, this message of taking back control and being responsible for yourself is just profoundly empowering. It's an idea that really hits home when people feel like they have no control over their health or their situation. It offers the sense that you are the one in the driver's seat of your own life.
But, and this is a big but, here's where things take a really sharp turn. There's a powerful, and for a lot of people, a very severe backlash against these exact same ideas. It seems like for every person who feels empowered by this book, there's another who feels blamed.
This quote from a 1-star review, well, it doesn't mince words. This is what the critics are saying. They argue that Hay's philosophy just goes way too far. They say it crosses a line from self-empowerment into something that isn't just unscientific, but is genuinely actually harmful.
This criticism got especially loud during the AIDS crisis of the 1980s, which was exploding right when Hay's fame was taking off. She started these support groups called Hay Rides for people with HIV and AIDS, and while a lot of people found hope in her message, critics, like this reviewer, accused her of basically telling sick and dying people that their illness was their own fault, that it was because of a personal failing, a lack of self-love.
And that is the central charge against the book. If you really truly believe that your thoughts cause everything, well then the unavoidable conclusion is that victims are responsible for what happens to them, whether it's illness, poverty, or even abuse. The critics say this just willfully ignores reality, things like biology, genetics, and systemic injustice.
So you really see the fundamental conflict here. On one side, you've got this message of radical empowerment, and on the other, a message of radical, and critics would call it cruel, self-blame. It's the exact same idea, just seen from 2 completely different and totally opposed perspectives.
So how does this all shake out? Let's look at the legacy she leaves behind, this deeply divided legacy. How is she remembered? As a healer or as a charlatan?
Her work with AIDS patients back in the 80s really captures this duality perfectly. I mean, on the one hand, she's on huge shows like Oprah, being praised for giving hope to this terrified and marginalized community. But at the exact same time, she's being accused of being an immoral charlatan, of profiting from the desperation of dying people by selling them what critics called false hope.
And look, whatever you think of her ideas, you cannot deny her success. She didn't just write a bestseller. She turned her whole philosophy into Hay House, a massive publishing empire. This company became the go-to place for other huge names in the New Age movement, like Deepak Chopra and Wayne Dyer. She basically created the blueprint for the modern self-help industry.
So in the end, we're left with these 2 completely opposing views of her legacy. Was she a pioneer who taught millions about self-love and positive thinking, or was she a peddler of dangerous pseudoscience who blamed victims for their own suffering? The answer, it seems, depends entirely on who you ask.
Ultimately, the book's incredible popularity and the fierce controversy around it force us to ask a really difficult question, one that goes way beyond just Louise Hay. When it comes to the power of our own minds, where do we draw the line between life-changing empowerment and a dangerous, harmful delusion?